If you will, Ms. James, City Clerk, would you call the roll to council?
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Hattie Portis Jones.
Absent.
Honorable Alex Heath.
Present.
Honorable Linda J. Davis.
Present.
Honorable Pat Palin.
Present.
Honorable James Whitmore.
Absent.
Honorable Ulysses Smallwood.
Absent.
Turn this down, getting feedback. Mr. Mayor,
Okay, go ahead. Mr. City Administrator, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mayor and council members. We have one work session item presented for this evening. That is an item presented by our Planning and Zoning Department. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Rebecca.
Members of council, when we get ready to start, if you want to ask any questions, could you make sure you're speaking to the mic because the people on YouTube can't hear us. Just speaking to the mic once we get into the questioning period. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am here before you tonight just to describe a couple of tools that we have implemented recently with the Planning and Zoning Commission. I wanted to describe them a little bit and offer them to Mayor and City Council if they are tools that you all would like to use in the future. So it's two tools that I'm going to describe, the first one being motion sheets, and then the second one being public hearing scripts. And so we have, in coordination with Valerie, the zoning attorney, we have implemented these before Planning and Zoning Commission and have received really great feedback on their ability to kind of use and reference these during meetings and public hearings. The first one that I'll go into very briefly, each of these, is the motion sheet. And what this does is it outlines every single one of the actions that are before you on each public hearing. And it provides, at the very top, a staff recommendation. And then from there, it's a series of different options to help you kind of craft your motion as you're kind of going through and hearing the analysis. It's also a tool that you can kind of take notes on if there are additional conditions or anything that you're kind of identifying through the process that you'd like to incorporate. It's just kind of a tool to be able to track all of that. I'll back up a little bit. So each case has a series of different options that you can go by. These are not, the gamut of options, but these are probably the most frequently used options. If there's not any kind of indication that there's going to be a desire for a deferral, we might not include that on the motion sheet, but that obviously is always an option to be able to do that. So what these different motions do is provide you just verbiage that you can reference should you, kind of want to reference a specific motion related to staff's recommendation. So the first one, again, staff recommendation, and it just clearly mirrors that of staff's recommendation, references a specific staff report so that all of that content is there in your motion for the record. The one with additional conditions that gives you that option is so that you can add conditions. If you've heard something through the conversation that you think, this really needs to be addressed as a condition, then it gives you that language that you can articulate and then add to it so that it's preserving those staff conditions in your actual motion. And then we've got, lastly, the alternative motion. In the case of this sample, the alternative motion is a denial, and in which case there's also the recommendation to identify which criteria by which you're denying it on. And it also provides you, we identify the criteria in the staff reports, but this gives you the second sheet or whatever the last sheet might be, lays out each one of the criteria so that you can quickly reference it and identify which, that's the review and approval criteria that you have to make your decisions. And so you can quickly pull out, I move to deny because it doesn't meet this and this, and you can specifically call that out in your motion. Again, if the alternative motion is potentially an approval because we've recommended denial, then that alternative motion would also cite our recommended conditions, where we usually try and give you guidance. If you do make the findings based on the criteria different than staff has, then here's some suggested conditions. So that's what that alternative motion would be in the case of staff's recommendation being an approval or a denial. Again, most importantly, these are for the purpose of referencing staff report information and then the analysis criteria. And then the review criteria at the end, so that you have that as a quick reference and not kind of buried within the staff reports for you. Lastly, we've got the hearing script, and this is something in the Planning and Zoning Commission application, we've outlined the kind of what to do for the entire agenda. If we were to do this in front of Mayor and City Council and offer this as a tool, it's not something that we would probably spell out every action and process that you take on the agenda. It would just be for the public hearing portion. And again, this is just a reference tool that, as things are happening in a meeting, if you get lost as to, where we are, it's something that you can quickly reference and identify kind of where we are in the meeting. It's also a tool that if the presiding officer is Mayor Pro Tem and she's not presiding very often, it's also something that can help, or anybody else who's presiding over a public hearing, gives you that kind of level of security to be able to run through the meeting if you don't typically do it and aren't typically apprised of kind of how to run through the process. So we can do anything from offering these for every meeting or just kind of at request. Hey, there are new council members. This would help them kind of follow along what's happening. Or it could be, at request or every meeting, whichever you prefer, or not at all. Again, the outline of what's provided in the hearing script would be first in opening, just kind of the hearing section of the agenda. It'd be identifying those procedures and kind of those overall procedures that are talked about in every meeting. And then the item introduction and staff presentation. And then just all of those public hearing components, opening and closing public hearings, having the conversation, pro and con, and all those different, the time periods that you all stipulate in your procedures today, that would all just be articulated within this hearing script. So with that, I'll stand ready for questions, but just wanted to offer those as potential tools that can help you in your process.
Mayor,
Any
if I-
member of council have any, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add to Ms. Kiefer's very informative presentation that these are all tools to enhance our current process. So this isn't a change to the current process. Everything that happens currently continues to happen. These are additional tools that have proven to be very helpful with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Oftentimes, phrasing motions with all of the certain conditions that come with planning and zoning items can be a bit challenging. So they found it very useful. The other relevant point is that how you phrase those motions can have some legal impact. Because if an item gets appealed or gets appealed to Superior Court and the motion was not framed appropriately, that down the road could create some challenges for us. So these tools are just very helpful, and they've worked very well at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we wanted to present this in a work session format to see if there may be an option for it to be helpful for council members as well.
Does any member of council have any questions? Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. How will these tools look? Is it just like it is here, printed with just?
Yes, ma'am. So, and really, we can work with you to work on a format that kind of visually looks, kind of calls out the important components that you would prefer. But really, that would be the proposed format without any additional feedback. It's here's the case number, here's the address, and then here are the series of potential, motions that you could have, and so that you can clearly pick out which one you'd like to pursue.
So my question to Mr. Phillips, when you said there'll be some motions that may not hold up in court if it goes to court, can you give me an example of that? Do they have to?
The more accurate description is, it is optimal for the motion to be as clear and reflect the actual zoning conditions as possible. We just want those motions to be accurate. And so when there are various conditions, certain zoning references, all of that needs to be accurately included in the motion. For someone like Ms. Kiefer, who does this every day, it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
Because she's very familiar with it. For those of us who may not touch the zoning ordinance every day, in various cases, be it a use permit, be it a rezoning, be whatever it is, sometimes in the midst of a meeting, it's a little difficult to capture all of that appropriate language in a motion. The person making the motion, be it a council member or the planning and zoning board member, may understand what they're trying to make a motion, but wording it exactly right,
Right.
sometimes be a little tricky. So all this is a tool to help make sure that we get the language correct. Because if it is not correct and you leave out a condition, as an example, and it goes forward, and down the road someone says, well, I thought this was a part of the motion, you go back and look at the minutes, it wasn't included as part of the conditions listed in the motion, and that could create challenges down the road. So it's just for accuracy and efficiency.
Okay.
And again, it's proven to be useful with the Planning and Zoning Committee.
And can I add to Ms. Davis, just an additional, as you can call, layer of protection, I guess you could say. That's a lot of why your city clerk, you'll see periodically, she'll ask, what did you say, or for clarification purposes between the city clerk and your city attorney, along with the tools that just simply to ensure that for all intents and purposes, any motions made or any clarification in terms of an amendment to a motion between what the tools that they're offering here as relates, as well as our city clerk and our city attorney listening in, the chances of us actually having a real serious oversight is diminished substantially. So again, and then that's again just to add protection because of the confidence that I have personally in the two people that I just mentioned.
And I'll just simply say a clean record is always advisable.
Right.
That's really helpful. And sometimes the intent may not be reflected in the way it's worded. And so this kind of closes that gap.
Does anyone else have any questions? Because we have two items that have a public hearing, and one of the modifications I was going to use tonight was when you can make a motion to open the public hearing. And I mean, if I'm correct, I saw that in your presentation. Council, can I get a motion to open the public hearing? Is there a second? And you open the public hearing. The question, the only thing I want to make sure I don't have to have a motion to close. I can just close if I'm correct.
Yeah, and we'll follow the procedures that you all.
Is that correct? I don't have to have a motion to close. Okay, gotcha. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's
Yeah, and again, in my efforts to try to at least mirror our boards as well as our council meeting, that when I was going through this, I was just looking at some things that I could, in this case, I could actually use out of this too, and that was one of them. So.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Mayor Avery, if you do a motion to open, you will have to do a motion to close.
Oh, so, okay. Then I missed, okay. Then that's great clarification. Okay.
And that's a good example, Mayor, because as an elected official with a lot of experience, you're able to kind of navigate these issues a certain way based on the number of times you've done it previously.
Right.
Planning and zoning board members who may not have as much experience, phrasing these the right way, getting the public hearing opened and closed the right way. These are just additional tools that have proven helpful.
Okay, gotcha. Any other members of council has a question as relates to what's been said? Mr. Whitmore, we were just kind of going over what was already in the book. Did you have any questions based on what you read in terms of some of the tools that they were mentioning that we could use in terms of protocol there in the workshop? I didn't know. I want to make sure you had time enough to ask anything you may have wanted.
I'll catch her after the.
Oh, okay. All right, sir. Is there, being that there's no other questions, can I guess, a motion to adjourn the workshop?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. We'll see you again at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, sir.
Your two state rep.